At the time of this recording, Dungeon Meshi, or Delicious in Dungeon, is still an ongoing manga with around 92 chapters that are released monthly. The series does seem to be nearing its conclusion very soon and already has an anime adaptation confirmed to be on the way by Studio Trigger. There's also a promotional video out there that you can view on YouTube if you like. This story is set in a fantasy world where dungeons exist and many adventurers dive deep into them searching for fame and riches. The dungeons also seem to be cursed, as at the start of this story, the one used as the main setting is seen having someone crawl out of it saying whoever defeats the magician inside the dungeon will become the new ruler of his kingdom before his body crumbles and blows away with the wind. Our tale follows Laius, a tall man, which is basically a human in this world, and his party that consists of a few other races such as an elf, a halfling, a dwarf, and 2 other tall men. When we're introduced to Laius and his party, his group is already deep into the dungeon, and we see them facing off against a powerful red dragon, and they aren't exactly doing very well against it. Normally his group may have been able to take down this monster, but in this case it's especially difficult because they're starving. You see, before encountering the red dragon, they spent a day lost in the dungeon due to a printing mistake on their map, and then they lost another 3 days worth of food in a pitfall trap. Hearing this should already tell you what type of story this would be. Yes, we're following a bunch of buffoons as they delve deep into a dungeon. With the group tired and hungry, their moves become sluggish as they fight, and they aren't nearly as strong as they'd normally be. When Laius is almost eaten by the red dragon, he's pushed out of the way by his sister Phelan, who is then eaten by the dragon, and the entire party is wiped out. Luckily, someone managed to cast a teleportation spell to get them out of there before it was too late, and now back on the surface level, Laius along with Marcel, the elf mage, and Chilchak, the halfling locksmith, are met with a resignation letter from the other 2 members of their guild, reducing their numbers to just the 3 of them. The 3 main characters who remain all want to go back into the dungeon to rescue Phelan, since even though she was eaten, it's actually possible to resurrect the dead in this story through magic as long as some part of their body is retrieved. In fact, there are actually people who traveled through some earlier levels of the dungeons just to find dead people to revive them for a fee. Unfortunately, Laius and his party are broke, so they can't afford to take another trip. At first, Laius suggests that the other 2 leave the guild so that he can sell off their armor to afford downgrades in food. Afterwards, he would go into the dungeon alone, but the others argue that it's not a good plan, and so they decide to enter the dungeon together with all of the equipment that they still have, and since they can't afford food, they'll just eat food found in the dungeon, since the monsters have to be eating something to stay alive too. Marcel and Chilchak realize that Laius may be considering eating monsters, and their concerns are immediately answered when he confirms that yes, he plans to eat monsters that appear to be edible, which Marcel is against immediately. Before entering the dungeon, they run into a party fleeing from a walking mushroom monster, and they help kill it and decide to try eating that one. As they're about to cook it, Laius says the dish needs a little more than just mushrooms and fishes out a monster scorpion from a crack in the wall, and Chilchak asks Laius if he's always been looking for an excuse to eat monsters. Turns out he's right, and Laius is actually obsessed with monsters, keeping a journal with bits of information about them along with drawings and even doodles of his own imaginary monsters. He's basically a big kid. He wants to know all about monsters. He thinks they're super cool. He wants to be a monster, that type of thing. As they begin making a scorpion and mushroom hot pot, an eavesdropping dwarf appears, eager to help them properly cook their food. The dwarf introduces himself as Senshi. He's been living off the land in the dungeon for years, and so he's a pro at dungeon cuisine. He dislikes seeing young people not getting the proper nutrition needed to stay healthy and agrees to join their party to cook the food made out of dungeon monsters that they encounter. With that, the main party for the rest of the story has been assembled, and we follow these goofballs as they fight off tons of different monsters and prepare them in creative and fun ways for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There are many reasons to love Dungeon Meshi, but the main sell is the great characters. As they get farther into the dungeon, we learn about each member of Laius' party more and more, what they like and dislike, and what their different reasons for dungeon crawling are besides wanting to save Phelan, Laius' sister. While there are tons of comedic moments, such as getting to see how much of a monster nerd Laius is each time they strategize over how to defeat and then cook one, on the other side of the coin, you also learn of the deep, dark secrets of the dungeon and the history of dungeons across the entire world. Since all of the main characters are of different races, you also learn of the struggles and the reasons some characters feel a certain way towards other races, like for example, the elves in this world basically look down on everyone, but it's because their lifespans are a big part of how the world is run. The elves live the longest, and because of this, they see other races as simply not old or mature enough to understand the things that they've come to learn and understand with time. but many people straight up just don't like the elves. The frequent food cooking sequences will feel right at home for you if you're used to them already from reading stories like Golden Kamui, but I could see how that might not be everyone's cup of tea. I will admit that personally, when I started this story, simply taste testing the first few chapters, I wasn't sure where it would go or how I would feel about it in the end, but I stuck it out, and after a few more chapters felt as though I was rewarded with a delicious feast. The Monster of the Month format doesn't feel so bad when you get to watch how these idiots do things like using holy water to purify spirits and make sorbet, or dry out the innards of slime to make noodles, or even eating ice golem stew. The time we spend watching them figure out attack patterns for each monster and how to take them down while they spill out their feelings about life and reasons for becoming adventurers is just a cherry on top, and the story itself is a treat. I have no doubt in my mind that anyone will enjoy this manga if they pick it up. I for sure am looking forward to rereading it when it ends, which seems to be coming very soon. Like I said, as of right now, I have a strong gut feeling that Dungeon Meshi will end in the next 3 or so chapters. And when the anime drops, you better believe I'll be tuned in every week with a plate of something delicious. Let me know below if you're already a fan of Dungeon Meshi or if you plan to check it out. And if you've enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, consider subscribing, and that's going to be it. Thanks for watching, and if you don't mind, I think I got a little adventuring to do in my own kitchen now. See you guys later.